Alright, howdy gents. Welcome to Combat Mission Battle for Normandy. I've actually played some of the other combat missions on my channel, Shock Force 2, Combat Mission Afghanistan, and Black Sea, and I figured that's all a bunch of Cold War or modern stuff. Why don't we go into World War II? Because that's something I'm obviously personally really interested by, as you probably could have told by all the games I play like Men of War, Company of Heroes, and I also assume that this will resonate with a lot of you just because it's a little bit less high-tech. There's no thermals, there's no lasers, there is obviously some automatic weapons, but there's a lot less of them, which makes combat in this game feel very different, in my opinion, from Afghanistan, Black Sea, or, well, especially Shock Force 2. With that said, this will be my first after-action report, or AAR, I've ever done in a PvP game. I was actually playing here against one of my buddies. So just to give you an idea, this takes place during the opening stages of Operation Market Garden, which is, by the way, a DLC module to the Battle for Normandy game. On the bottom end of the map, near the bridge, is where I get to set up my defenses. I am playing as a German unit. We are about to be attacked by an American Airborne unit as part of Operation Market Garden. Here you can see the disposition of my units. I actually had a lot of freedom on where I wanted the trenches, the AA guns, etc. to go. The only thing that was sort of set in stone was the position of the most forward machine gun bunker. It's not one you're allowed to move around, but we'll get to that in a second. As you can see, about a platoon of infantry supported by two quad 20mm AA guns. Now I will be getting some reinforcements, a platoon of retreating soldiers who are kind of being told to fight, so their morale and training isn't very good. And then later on, we're getting some NCO school troops. So by the end of this battle, we'll be able to field about 3 platoons worth of infantry. So we're aware we're fighting American Airborne, and they can bring up to a couple platoons worth of infantry. So we have our work cut out for us, mainly because a lot of our starting units and half of the reinforcing units are not very well trained and don't really have a lot of motivation to fight. So they are very prone to panicking, retreating, basically just getting the hell out of there if any sort of combat happens towards them. So funny note, this map is actually super familiar to me. I used to live in this area for the longest time of my life. I used to live in Beuningen, used to live in Bemmel, used to live in a little town here called Millingen a very, very long time ago. Now I obviously live in Canada, and it's been 5-6 years since I've been here, but little note. Anyway, the idea here is that our job is to occupy the guardhouse and the bridge. There is a vehicle that comes in, but it doesn't give you any points. I'm not even sure what it does. And then there's a slight spoiler under the notes section. We can see here that the points are a little different from what they say here, but also we can see we get an Allied Company HQ team, and we get 3 Allied platoons that we can destroy. Obviously, for partial destruction, you'll get partial points. And some quick math between these makes it possible for me to get up to 1,000 total points. Alright, without further ado, let's get into this battle, and if you want to see more of these after-action reports, let me know in the comments. Let's go. Looking from behind that most forward machine gun bunker towards the American spawn, an American squad immediately rushes into view of this MG42 bunker. One American goes down. The squad is trying to get out of the murder zone. Another American goes down. They have to make a choice. Do we stay here? Are we suppressed? They're not really too sure where the fire is coming from, or they're just too suppressed to return fire. A 4th soldier goes down, making this a pretty costly start for the Americans. With squads on the side of the bunker trying to engage it, and the squad that's been annihilated out in the open trying to return fire, one very brave American does get mowed down in a very long-lasting salvo. Smokes are coming out, trying to block the line of sight between the machine gun bunker and the heavily hit squad. I've just decided to hide the trees here for a second so you have a little bit of a better view. 2 American squads are on the flank of the bunker, and the following happens. A grenade from one of the M1 Grands knocks out the entire machine gun nest in one explosion. Now, they did waste quite a bit of ammo, and that machine gun nest honestly got more kills than I thought it would, so knocking out 4 to 5 Americans for a loss of one machine gun team that I couldn't even move out of that position wasn't necessarily the worst start to the battle. With the bridge on our right, and a lot of Americans seemingly being in the forest behind the machine gun bunker that just took out, I realized that my far left flank has no machine guns covering it. I rotate one of the heavy machine gun teams away from overwatching the bridge, which is already covered by at least 2 quad 20mm anti-aircraft guns, and I tell them to rotate to the far left flank, moving the infantry there just a little bit to the right. This way, if any sort of force tries to come from that left forest, they'll have to work against Hitler's buzzsaw before they can just overrun the trenches. I was really starting to get worried when I didn't see the enemy for a while, and I figured this was probably the best use of that machine gun for the time being. MG42 team is almost done setting up their tripod. We do have some American presence now spotted in the woods to our left, basically just in front of the trench system. We have a team with an MG42 in the guard station that now spots Americans within their range, engages them, while 2 teams here, including the one with the heavy machine gun, are about to unleash hell on the Americans in the close tree line. Now, they don't actually manage to take anyone down, but the suppression they provide is very valuable, and that comes obviously with that 1200 RPM you can get on the MG42. Just to give you in perspective with the HUD on, you can see a couple of spotted infantry symbols on the left side there near the road to Nijmegen mark. I saw this happening, and I was really afraid to have a large part of this airborne platoon use the trees on the left side, who I've just hid, but you can still see the tree trunks. I was afraid of them coming behind me, enveloping my units, then obviously causing a mass rout and making this basically an instant loss. I rotated some of my squads into that forest to try and prevent that flank from happening, while MG42s are still going to be engaging some of the straggling units behind. As you can see, I do get some eyes on infantry down the road. We do have a team moving around, but I just really did not want to lose this battle before my reinforcements came in. I knew that when my reinforcements would come in, I would be able to not match the enemy in their training or even in their weaponry, because American Airborne are very well equipped, but at least I would have some extra MG42s to hopefully stem the tide. As you can see here on the left side of the bunker in the background, we do have some American paratroopers maneuvering, now engaging this bunker, which is only manned by an MP40 and 2 Car 98 infantry. This also happened to be, I'm pretty sure, the commander of basically all the units, so I really could not afford to lose this guy because it would really hurt my force's morale. So here, the vehicle mentioned in the brief comes onto the map. Again, I'm not really sure what this thing does. It doesn't really give you any points. I think it's just there for the joke of it, but it's trying to race across right behind that bunker they knocked out right at the start on the left side there. It's trying to race towards the bridge to get across it to give a message to a higher German commander. On the far left side of the trench line, the MG42 tripod team sees some American Airborne running in the distance that are actually going to be reinforcing the flank, so luckily we get some early shots on them. I don't think we actually knock any of them out, but at this point suppression is the name of the game. We can then see tracer fire from the other machine gun team flying over our heavy machine gun team because we got those airborne on the flank. Now luckily, my heavy machine gunner realized there's a threat to his flank. He rotates the machine gun and just starts blasting off into that tree line and make sure those guys are not going to be able to at least provide accurate suppressive fire on this team. In hindsight, I probably should have built the sandbag construction a little better because right now the trenches are very open to the flank and the gunner actually gets taken off of the machine gun. We're looking now at the back of one of our quad 20mm flak guns. With that machine gun team losing their gunner, they're going to be inoperational for just a couple of seconds while they figure out who now has to man the gun. Luckily, having set up my flak guns in a way where they can cover that left forest just a little bit, they provide some very much needed covering fire. I'm not sure if they knock anyone out, but just the fact of having this quad 20mm fire high explosive flak rounds into this tree line is causing the American Airborne a lot of suppression and obviously makes them less accurate. A few turns ago, I actually managed to get reinforcements. So these are the retreating units that have been sort of pressed back into service. They are not of a very high morale. They're also not very well trained, but I figured if I can just throw enough of these guys into this forest, I can at least stem the tide until my more elite NCO school guys come in. Looking on the back left of my flank, we knock out one of the American troopers with one of those reinforcing squads, but this is about to turn into a huge battle between my guys in the trenches, these upcoming reinforcements, and elite American Airborne that are just running right in front of us. We don't spot them until it's pretty much too late. Our guys, again, low morale and not very well trained, immediately say, we're not dealing with that, and a large part of that team, as you can see, pulls back away from direct combat. We can see a BAR, or hear a BAR, firing at this squad as they're running away. So with the trench to our front right, this is the entire extent of our second wave of NCO school reinforcements. Honestly, these guys could not have come in at a better time, at a better place, and you'll see why right here. They come on the battlefield and they spot in the distance basically a squad's worth of American Airborne. Now, pretty much every one of these teams you see here has one, if not more, MG42s, and they make an absolute insane short work of these American paras, and I'm honestly impressed by the fact that some of them make it out of that kill zone alive. Let's take a look at that from the American perspective, shall we? As you can see, the amount of firepower just totally obliterating the Americans in the open, and at least 8 to 9 of them go down between all the German reinforcements. With their flank now eliminated, the remaining American paratroopers are trying to get the hell out of this area. They are now outnumbered. The flaks are obviously still pouring fire into them, so are the machine guns in the trench. Another American goes down. And for right now, the American player can't really do anything until he gets his reinforcements onto the battlefield. But this flank is at least secure for the time being. At this point, multiple turns have progressed. Some of my recon units on the right side of the river now notice American paratroopers trying to encroach on the tree line there. I'm repositioning one of my MG42 teams behind the flak gun to help cover the river, and then one guy just gets taken out by a very lucky burst. My flak 20mm, however, is not very cool with that. As you can see, it's raining down explosive quad 20mm into the tree line, as well as some machine guns coming from the trench line. At this point, I'm aware that obviously now there is American presence on the right side of the river, which probably means the Americans have gotten some reinforcements, and now I have to try and push on the left while keeping enough forces here on this right side to keep the open area covered. One of my flak crew gets hit. The crew doesn't feel too good about that, takes some suppression, and also with all the enemy mortars that they can throw our way, these AA guns are really living on borrowed time. Looking towards the forest from behind both of my flak guns, we can see just a mortar round landing there behind the flak team. They are really obviously trying to knock out my flak, before they can leave the tree line and access that open area, allowing them to get to the bridge, those flaks are going to be a very, very useful targets for them to take out. Now, we can't see some of those mortar shells just destroying the machine gun team, the ammo bearers, and the flak crew, thus basically having my heavy firepower on this side of the map. Their only other goal is now to knock out that other quad 20 mil before I can rotate more of those reinforcements from the left to the right to try and at least cover the open area with enough MG42s. While all that's going on the right, I'm trying to aggressively push a pretty decent large size force, about a platoon's worth of German infantry on that left flank where their initial flanking maneuver failed. My goal is to try and push any remaining forces out away from my machine gun team in that trench line so it's secure, and then try to bring the battle line up to a diagonal across that road where the Kugelwagen came in on, basically right behind that machine gun bunker from the opening stages of the battle. Now, this is actually pretty hard. Their infantry is better trained and better equipped, so for me to actually get eyes on them usually means I gotta sort of throw a unit forward, usually selecting units that are a little bit less higher quality in training and equipment, and sort of find the enemy more or less by losing some of my own men in the process. Because people asked for this in previous combat mission videos, we're going to take a look at sort of the mid-game situation. Right now, the bridge and the guardhouse are relatively strongly under my control. We have that huge amount of forces amassed on the left side, though I was really not too sure if I could push them up hard, because I didn't want to lose a bunch of my more elite units, but I also didn't want to just throw away my green units, knowing that in the end, it's all about the bridge and the guardhouse, and that left side was more of a distraction sort of annoyance for me. As you can see, we have 3 machine guns, a flak 20 mil, and 1 more machine gun, all trained on this right side. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 machine guns, a 5th machine gun in a bunker, and a 20 mil. So them trying to get out of this tree line would basically be suicide unless they knock out all of those units. In case they did charge the road, I had reinforcing infantry to maybe hopefully knock some of them out. But as far as I was concerned, we were in a pretty good spot about mid-game, turn 69. It took a couple of turns later, about turn 81, for stuff to really heat up again. One of my 20mm anti-aircraft guns that survived the entire onslaught of all the American machine guns and mortars has now run out of ammo. We just have a couple of heavy machine gun teams that are trying to cover the bridge, with again some infantry. You can see actually in the background some of my infantry retreating after taking some losses because there is just such heavy American fire coming from the tree line. Looking towards the bunker and flak position on the hill from the American side of things, the Americans now decide to do a charge into the open field to try and get some terrain. Now this doesn't really go as well. Again, my flak was out of ammo, but the amount of machine guns I was able to be firing upon this position made that a pretty bad idea. Accurate fire isn't really why these MG42s are so great. It's the amount of just pure suppression that makes them useful. Though obviously, when you're throwing 1,200 rounds down range per minute, you are also going to get some kills. Looking from the trenches on the right side of the bridge towards the American positions, I was trying to rotate men in and out of these trenches to get them in a better position. We do see some very brave but stupid American Airborne try to rush forward into absolutely just an abundance of German machine guns. At this rate, I'm pretty sure the idea for the American player was to try and get me into a ceasefire while they had control of the bridge, but luckily for me, he has yet to actually set foot on that particular bridge or in the guardhouse. Now, some Americans do get dangerously close to my positions. The road over here gives them a little bit of cover from the trenches, but it doesn't give them cover from the trench line up the hill and all the machine gun positions up there. And maybe 20 feet from the road, even these most brave Americans finally realize it's not really worth going here, and the open field is and obviously stays a absolute massacre zone. As we enter turn 93, American Airborne on the far left side of the map where that flank took place are actually getting to the point of just surrendering instead of fighting to the death, as they also realize there is approximately 25 or so Germans now on their flank. With German heavy machine gun fire from multiple positions and a lack of American mortars or any artillery support, this battle is pretty much going to only go one way. The Americans have no way to cross the open, the amount of machine gun fire is just too much, and it looks like the Germans are just having this as sort of a field exercise, because every time the Americans go into the open, they lose one or two men, they're forced to go back to the tree line, and they repeat this until there's really no way around. This is probably going to be a win for the Germans. The general experience here of the Americans in the tree line is very visible. A lot of down, wounded, or dead Americans amongst a couple of living friendlies who are now very definitely starting to see that this attack is not really going to be going anywhere. Some airborne are retreating in the face of just too many MG-42s, and also the fact that, whether or not they are aware of it, the Germans have really pushed on that left side towards that machine gun bunker from the very first turn. Alright, in turn 99, we agreed to a ceasefire. My friend and I, we kind of just both agreed that, hey, if we continue to play this for much longer, we're just going to waste our time. The Allies were never going to be able to reach the bridge. Now, one thing that I kind of missed out, and that's my own fault, I forgot that for me to occupy the bridge was the only way to actually get points. I probably should have ran a unit onto the bridge to grab some of those bridge points, but the Americans managed to get 270 points from at least not capturing any targets, but killing a bunch of our infantry, including the AA guns, did give them a lot of points. For the German things, their targets were obviously here. As you could see, we did knock out quite a lot of Americans, including the entirety of the 3rd platoon, basically already giving us just as many points as the Americans got for knocking out some of the AA guns. To look at the map here in a final review, we can see that the left side of the river has been completely removed of Allied forces, and the very couple of remaining ones are to be found in the tree line. Obviously, what would very likely happen here, the Americans would try to attack this bridge with support from 30th Corps as they ran up towards Arnhem via Hell's Highway, historically speaking, but here in this battle, the Germans at least managed to win the day. Now, sadly, because we buddy healed or healed everybody on this flak gun, I can't click on it to see how many units it killed or wounded. This other flak gun, because I didn't spend any time on healing anyone on this gun, they managed to alone kill 25 or wound or kill 25 Americans, which actually is pretty huge. That's a lot of infantry. So I'm not sure how good this other flak gun did, but 25 on this one is pretty good, considering a random machine gun only killed 2. Well, this gun actually killed 12, which is pretty out there too. So just between this flak gun and this machine gun, we're looking at 37 casualties. As you can see, in total, the Americans suffered well over 100 casualties. With the Germans here, I only suffered about 52, so just about half. We did lose that Kubelwagen, not that it really matters, but that's the vehicle that's counting as lost here, with the one man missing being the POW we took on the left side of the Forcer, because he was basically, as you could see on the map, all by himself. And this is the first time I ever played Combat Mission Normandy, also like my third or fourth PvP game. I hope you guys enjoyed this after action report. I do intend to do more of them, not just on Normandy, but some of the other Combat Mission games as well. For example, the new Cold War that came out a couple of weeks ago. For now, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'd love to see you in the next one. Cheers.